like you're.
Did I lose the crowd yesterday?
No, but they've turned it up for you. And
Yeah.
you got to get the
Right.
right up to your lips. Two minutes.
Now? Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tucson Festival of Books. My name is Bill Buckmaster. I hosted Arizona Illustrated on Channel 6, PBS here for 23 years, and then in 2011 started my own business and my own radio show, and we're on each weekday, noon to 1 on AM 1030 KVOI The Voice. And I'd like to thank you all for coming out. This particular portion of our festival is being sponsored by the City of Tucson and the Arizona Daily Star, and we thank them for their support of this session. This presentation will last about 1 hour, and we'll have plenty of time. We'll carve out at least 20 minutes for all of your questions, and we'll get some good answers to them, I'm sure. So please hold your questions until we get into the final portion of our program. At the conclusion of the session, the authors will be going to a signing area to meet you and autograph their books, and out of respect for the authors and your fellow audience members, we ask that you turn off your cell phones. So I see some of you reaching to do that right now, indeed. Today we want to welcome the co-authors of the best-selling book. It's titled Empty Mansions, The Mysterious Life of Huguette Clark and the Spending of a Great American Fortune. Bill Dedman is an investigative reporter. Bill, right next to me here, investigative reporter for NBC News. He received the 1989 Pulitzer Prize in investigative reporting for his work. The series was called The Color of Money. This was a series of articles in the Atlantic Journal-Constitution on racial discrimination by mortgage lenders in middle-income neighborhoods. In 2010, Bill introduced the public to heiress Huguette Clark and her empty mansions through his compelling series of narratives for NBC, which, by the way, became the most popular feature in the history of NBC's news website. Was 110 million page views. Pretty impressive. Paul Clark Newell is with us. Mr. Paul Clark Newell, Jr. is a cousin of Huguette Clark, and Paul has researched the Clark family history for over 20 years. He shared many conversations with Huguette about her life and family. Mr. Newell also received a rare private tour of Huguette's mysterious estate overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Santa Barbara. It is an incredibly compelling story. It is one, Bill and Paul, that I could not put down. So right off the bat, I want to both say congratulations to both of you, and I'm sure many of our audience members also have enjoyed the book. Bill, let's begin with you. When did you first hear about Huguette?
It was 2009. My wife and I had houses on the brain. You know, the house values had fallen in the financial crisis. And we were moving. My wife's job had moved from Boston to the New York area. And we were stuck as landlords in Boston. We couldn't sell our house. And as renters, looking for houses but unable to afford them. And you've all been in that situation where you're worried about how to get enough square footage, how to find a driveway that our girls could ride their bikes on. We had houses on the brain. And I was looking at the real estate listings just for distraction and saw at the top of the charts, well beyond our price range, the most expensive house in Connecticut was priced at $34 million, but then marked down to $25. It was a bargain.
What a deal.
And it was a cozy charmer with 14,000 square feet and 52 acres and a river. And I was curious who owned it. I imagined it might be the chairman of General Electric, perhaps. And I looked in the town website, and I saw a little note in the zoning records that said, this house has been unoccupied since this owner bought it in 1951. That didn't seem possible. So I went over the next day to see it, and the caretaker asked me, he said, you know, I've not seen any Clarks. This is Mrs. Clark's house. I get paid by the lawyer every month. Her lawyer in New York sends me a check. No one's ever lived here. There's no furniture in the house. I take care of it. It seemed more like a bird sanctuary. And as I was leaving, he said, can I ask you a question? Do you suppose she's been dead all these years? Well, I didn't know, but it turned out that this was not her nicest empty house. And she had a nicer house in California, in Santa Barbara, worth close to $100 million, overlooking the Pacific, that she'd last visited in the 1950s. And the legend was that gardeners were still at work and that the cars were untouched in the garage, and I didn't believe that. But in the book, you can see a picture of the Cadillac limousine and the Oldsmobile convertible, both with license plates that say 1949. And she had 15,000 square feet overlooking Central Park in 3 apartments, 42 rooms in New York City, where the doorman said, no, it's been at least 20 years, we've not seen her. The elevator does not stop on her floor. And so that started a hunt to see what had happened to this reclusive woman who, it turned out, was tied to an amazing American family. Her father had been thought to be as rich as Rockefeller in the early 1900s, was known as a genius in business, but sullied his reputation in politics. We, in part, have the 17th Amendment allowing for direct election of senators because W.A. Clark was paying legislators to vote for him in Montana. And he'd faded from memory. And it was astonishing to think of the math that he had been born in 1839. He was 22 years old when the Civil War began. He was born in the Martin Van Buren administration. And his daughter, his youngest child, born in 1906 in Paris during the Teddy Roosevelt administration, might still be alive when Barack Obama was president. She held a ticket on the Titanic, and she was alive on 9/11. So that's what began, pulling that string of the real estate listing, began a search to find out what was her story and what had happened to her and why was much of her property being sold.
And then you hooked up with Paul. When did that happen, Bill?
I was introduced, this was after Huguette had died. She died in 2011 at age 104. She was 2 weeks short of her 105th birthday. And one of the relatives introduced me to Paul and said, you fellas might be writing the same book. You should get together. And I'm very glad that we did.
Paul, tell us a little bit about what was it like growing up? What did you know about Huguette?
Very little. And as a matter of fact, even then and right up till the time that Bill invaded her privacy.
Thank you for putting that together.
She was virtually unknown. Her father had been a very famous American tycoon.
Clark County is named in Nevada for
That's part of it,
Mr.
absolutely.
Clark, yes.
So, but even his name had faded.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an unusual name like Rockefeller or Carnegie, but I'm sure that it was partly because he didn't leave tracks. He didn't leave a big legacy in terms of philanthropic activity or other ways in which his name specifically was standing as one of the great, I guess today we'd call it a billionaire, but in his time, hundreds of millions of dollars in net worth.
Paul, when was the first time that you spoke with Huguette?
First time was in 1994,
Mm-hmm.
and I had been chipping away for some time in terms of the general family history, but focused more on her father, W.A. Clark, and partly because there was so little known about her, and at the time I was not even informed that she was still living, and that was applied. That applied in many other